Greetings. In this video, I'm going to go through some of the steps I use to recreate this pirate character. The modeling for the clothing is very basic, and I'm not going to go into that too much, but I will time-lapse through it. So I'll start off by loading up the HD mesh, and then send it over to Blender as a GOB avatar, which is fully rigged. The main difference between sending it as an avatar and a morph is that the avatar is rigged and you can use the proportion editor. The proportion editor is a fantastic tool. It's similar to the one in Character Creator, but it has a few more options, especially as it relates to child bones. Child bones are the bones that, in a hierarchy, they come below the main bone. Like the child bone of the hand would be the fingers. In cases where I will not want the child bone overly affected, I will choose none among the options. Now the character will not look very good when you're doing this. So basically this is just to put the character's proportions in the right place. And then you can pull the mesh out to fill in the gaps. This is the reference I'm using. I had AI turn this into an A pose. I believe it's of a Disney character, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Pirates of the Caribbean. Once you have things in the correct places or approximately, then you can start pushing and pulling the character with the grab brush, the smooth brush, and whatever tools you think will help you achieve the form. 90% of this is basically just a grab brush. You can actually use your mouse rather than a dedicated pen tablet. Often I would use my mouse, but I'm getting a little more used to using the tablet in Blender. For some reason, I have this mind block about using the tablet in Blender compared to ZBrush. I don't know why. It's because most of the work in Blender is using your mouse. Once you save something after you've used the proportion editor, you'll get an error saying that the keys have been deleted, or not really an error, but it's just a message. Don't worry about that. It's just part of the plugin. In retrospect, I probably should have sent this as a 0 subdivision level morph. It's because I find the lower subdivision easier to work with. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your project. You can always go back in later with a higher subdivision level and sculpt out some details. I find the face a little difficult for this character because it has an expression. The reference has an expression, and I want to sort of cancel out the expression. So I'm trying to visualize what the face will look like without his smile. And for animated characters, it can be a bit difficult. In some cases, you may want to actually sculpt out the expression and then cancel the expression after the character's finished. Now I'm going to switch to a different matte cap, just because it's easier to see some of the details in different matte caps. And again, you may want to send them over as a 0 subdivision level character, just for ease. Higher subdivisions are not always easier to work with. Like, less is more. With a lower subdivision level, you could also see the wireframe, whereas with a higher subdivision level, it's too condensed. And unlike ZBrush, you can't go back to a lower subdivision level during this particular process. It'd be nice if you could, but with ZBrush, you can just sort of scale down to lower resolutions, which is quite an advantage in my opinion. Keep in mind that there are masking and auto-masking options in Blender, which can be used automatically based on topology, face sets, things of that nature, which is very useful for characters like this. He's slowly coming together, but his face is pretty problematic. But you trust the process, and we'll see what happens. Certain elements can be hidden. I wouldn't delete them. I'm not sure how that will change the import process, but you can hide them, like the eyes, the eye occlusion, tear line, teeth, until you need them. The character is mostly in the correct position, so now I'm going to start blocking out some clothing. I'll start by adding a simple plane to the scene and then just extrude. I tend not to focus too much on my clothing process when doing these videos because it's not really my strong point. So I'm just going to zoom through a lot of this. Okay, now I'm going to use the hair tool to create some arm hair and leg hair, just like cartoony versions of it. In order to use the draw function of the tool, make sure draw is selected, hold down D, and then start drawing lines with your mouse or tablet. Once you have one hair drawn, you can actually create more hairs with a similar point count using the add tool. Just go to the curve shape options and you can set the point count and the shape, whether or not it follows the shape of your previous hair. I choose the circle option for the profile, which just gives a tube-like hair. For the subsystems, add a strand filter. This will allow you to add things like deformers, which are basically just modifiers for the hair, like mirror, curl, slide, scale, stuff like that. All hair will have the same settings unless you separate certain hairs and then create a new subsystem and then a new strand filter and then also the number next to the profile where it says circle profile UV. Click that and then it'll assign it a new profile separate from the previous hair settings. I was going to use the hair modifier to create curly hair, but I couldn't quite figure out the deformation settings. So I just manipulated one curve and then created clones of it. Before you export the hair, make sure you finalize it as a mesh item. There's a setting in the hair options, in the hair tool options, that says finalize hair. Click that. Now what you can do is rig each item to the armature, but I'm going to recommend against that. Like, don't follow this particular step that you're seeing on the screen. Basically, if you send the items over rigged, there's a couple bugs which you may encounter. It's best to just select them, export them individually as accessories, and then import them individually on the character creator side as the appropriate item, like clothing or hair or however you want to parent the item. It's just, you'll run into less problems that way. That's just my advice. As with all software and pipelines, you're going to encounter some bugs. So it's best to just know how to deal with them, and avoid them if possible. Bugs are constantly being fixed, as with all software, and that's a good thing. So basically what I would do is save a copy of this file, export each item as an accessory, delete them from your scene, then send the character over as unclothed avatar, and then import all the items individually. The main issue I found was the footwear. It deformed the feet when you took off the shoes, and you could not fix it without sending the character back without the shoes. So that's what I would recommend. So once the character's clothing is set up, you can give him an eye texture. I choose the slacker eyes, which are like toon eyes. And you can give him a basic skin texture. I use the heavy from HD Caricature Pack. And then I just took it to Krita and started manipulating the texture a bit. Since the clothes has basic UVs, it'll support colors. So I just sent over a very basic texture along with the UV guide. And this allows me to paint some very basic textures. I kind of know what each UV represents. And this is kind of a broken UV because I just did it really quickly. I repeated the process for the other articles of clothing and then came up with this result here. I didn't get quite as close to the concept as I would have liked. It's maybe 80% there. But for solo work, that's good enough for me, at least for something that only takes a couple hours. And maybe this will give you a look at the process of imagining a concept. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.